Hello, family.
Good morning.
Hi, sis.
Good morning. Yes.
Yeah. Something different about you?
No,
No?
don't
Okay.
trust your senses.
All right, I won't. You look lovely.
Thank you.
We're on lesson 345, but before we do, sis and I were discussing that lesson 344 would have been properly supported had we mentioned a particular blog that we thought coupled it like a fine wine with the right meal. This blog with lesson 344 entitled Busting the Myth of Giving. Busting the Myth of Giving. So
So you
that,
remembered it. Did you write it down?
yeah. I mean, I did
Ah.
remember it, but yeah. So it will pair with lesson 344, but you're going to find it right there at the top on lesson 345, today's lesson. All right? It's not too complicated. We're just sending that back for 344. Okay, so enjoy that. That's a big, big area, what the world teaches about giving and why the ego gives. Yeah, has nothing to do with true giving. All right. So this morning's lesson, yes, here we go. Lesson 345. I know our sis has some beautiful quotes to discuss, so I'm going to start us off with reading. And thank you for joining us. I offer only miracles today, for I would have them be returned to me. I offer only miracles today, for I would have them be returned to me. Father, a miracle reflects your gifts to me, your Son. And every one I give returns to me, reminding me the law of love is universal. Even here it takes a form which can be recognized and seen to work.
Good
The,
point.
mir-
Sorry. Come on.
the miracles I give are given back in just the form I need to help me with the problems I perceive. Father, in heaven it is different, for there are no needs. But here on earth, the miracle is closer to your gifts than any other gift that I can give. Then let me give this gift alone today, which, born of true forgiveness, lights the way that I must travel to remember you. Peace to all seeking hearts today. The light has come to offer miracles to bless the tired world. It will find rest today, for we will offer what we have received. I offer only miracles today, for I would have them be returned to me.
Hmm.
What were you going to say, sis?
Yeah. There's a lot in this lesson. Well, there's a lot in every lesson, isn't there?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and really, two things here first. Nothing is real. And Sis and you and I talked about this yesterday. Nothing is real unless it's shared.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Unless it's shared.
Mm-hmm.
And so through the ego filter, we have no idea about true sharing. And because we don't really understand true sharing, we tend to resist miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Without being conscious of what we're doing. Yeah. And so just again, I know everyone's heard this probably at least 50 to 100 times, but I think the most important thing here is how the law of love operates, right? The law of love. It only sees two expressions of love, right?
Right.
Regardless of what seems to occur, there are only two expressions of love.
Mm-hmm.
So one's clearly an expression of love
Mm-hmm.
that we recognize,
Right.
and that we feel gratitude for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and is often the felt state of that love, of that gratitude. Remembering gratitude and love are one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the second one is when someone else severely pisses us off.
Well, it's just
I
I
just
didn't
need to
expect
be,
you to say that.
like it's when somebody
Yes.
seems to attack us verbally, emotionally,
Right.
whatever it might be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we are triggered. We are triggered.
And
And
yet,
right,
it's
okay.
only a call for love, right?
That is a call for love.
Right.
The
Okay.
first is an expression of love,
Yes.
and the second one is a call for love.
That's
So
all that's ever going on.
that's all that's ever going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say from my own recent experience just this last week that I was triggered by some people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how the ego morphs as we advance in our trust.
Yes.
So the ego morphs from being outright ego unconsciousness to being a more refined ego that I call spiritual ego.
So more subtle, yeah? Not so obvious. Mm-hmm.
Not so obvious, but still smacks of ego
Mm-hmm.
because it still is justified in its own judgment of
Yeah.
others. Right?
Nothing like the ego using scripture or spiritual principles to hide behind, right? Yeah, that's a razor's edge.
That's it. That's it. So what was happening for me was that I could see very clearly the spiritual ego in others.
Mm-hmm. And there was judgment.
A little bit.
A smidge, a skosh, a smattering.
Well, okay, let's just put it this way. I was quite shocked.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, shock is a
So
judgment.
shock is judgment.
Yes.
Judgment is shock.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there was judgment there and I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my God, I'm just speaking from where I'm at here,
Sure.
is that I could definitely see some issues that were not being dealt with these other people. And I didn't really know how to handle it. And it was a little bit later,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
quite a lot later, that I realized, holy shit,
Uh-huh.
they're expressing a call for love.
Yes.
Was I answering that call for love?
Not well, there's judgment.
No.
Yeah. So judgment prevents us from recognizing it as a call for love. If that's all that Holy Spirit's seeing, right? And if we're not seeing it as a call for love, it's because we, the mind, right? Mythical me mind, has looked out and used its past learning and what it thinks it knows and has judged it. And judging it is the way that it protects its autonomy. Instead of opening up and recognizing a call for love and then letting that love come forth in answer to that call for love, where you would be blessed and they would be blessed, right? Yeah, that judgment prevents the miracle from occurring.
It does, sis. And just going back to my recent experience, thank God I went from vertical to horizontal. Yeah. And I was
Horizontal to
able
vertical.
to, sorry, horizontal to vertical.
Yes.
Is that right? Did I say?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
You
Lord.
got it.
Forgive me, guys.
No, it's great, sis.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, right. So
Mm-hmm.
was was I offering them a miracle if the spiritual ego that I was seeing was only a call for love? No. So I did come vertical. Vertical's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Vertical is
Yes.
upright.
Vertical. Uh-huh.
Yes. And so then I was able to do my own forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
always forgiving myself
Yes.
for having seen what is not there.
Right.
Okay. And so I was able to take that projection away
Mm-hmm.
from them and
Mm-hmm.
therefore from myself.
Right.
And then join with them in the pure heart, the light that we are in that Christ vision. And realize too that there's no way in the world that I could experience that, the joy of that forgiveness, without us, all of us, being blessed by that joy, because we share one mind.
That's it.
It's not, otherwise I've got a private mind
Mm-hmm.
that sees error in somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only seeing my own error.
Right. Yeah, and there's no sharing. There's nothing real going on. One privatized mind insisting that it knows something and judging and keeping them as a privatized separate mind. So coming back to this, the lesson, right? The law of love is God's law, which says there is one creation and it's all inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's felt and experienced by all of creation. When there's a wish for separation, which only goes on in that sleeping mind, right? Then there's that privatized mind, and it's where am I going with this? That it's seeking, the private experience where it's got thoughts of its own that are not shared, right? And so that, while we see that and judge it, that would seem to keep this dream of separation going. However, if we have the presence of mind to recognize the law of love, is one, that's a call for love. If love isn't happening, all it is the suggested absence or a void that we could fill with that love if we weren't busy judging it. And we get the experience of receiving the correction, right, from love itself, and in our receiving it and extending it to our brother, it's shared, right? And so love again is experienced. So it would seem like judgment is like the guard at the gate. I'm either going to judge it and keep the idea of separation, or I'm going to go within, ask, receive, and let. Because why? I'm transcending self-interest. I want to close, forgive me, the gap, right? With this other one. Yeah, I'm not going to make what my senses are perceiving real. And like you were saying, there's just one mind. So while I'm looking at a brother and judging them, I'm starting to do this, and it's just symbols. It's not absolute, but it's helpful for me to sort of draw this line coming out from mythical me and embracing the entire universe, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing that anything that I'm seeing that is not love, that isn't under the law of love, it's mine for the correction. If I'm believing any of that's true, it's mine to correct. And I'm happy to correct it, right? This is not going on in God. If it's not happening there, it isn't real. So, do you want to feed the illusion, or do you want to be part of the solution? Which is I'm going to agree with God. I don't care what my senses are perceiving. I want to know what God's knowing, and my will and God's are the same. So I'm saying yes to God's law that says love is there. And you are that love that can answer the call for love in whatever you're seeing, whether it calls itself war or disease or an insane brother or unfairly treated or lack of any form, right? Yeah, that's a big one. People really wrestle with that. Like, well, what is the war over there having to do with my mind? Well, there's something in your mind that says that there's a place where God isn't all. There's a place where love isn't being expressed. That's not true. Love is always being expressed in the kingdom of heaven. And if we're not seeing that and we're believing it, that's ours to heal. Yeah.
Because it's coming from our mind.
It is. That's it. That's that. I've lassoed it all in. It's like if I see an absence of lack of love anywhere, and I'm having any judgment about it, and judgment is the sign that you believe that that's true, then that's mine to heal. Yeah.
Thank you, sis. Thank you. I think we're getting it, aren't we?
Finally.
We're all, this beautiful family, we're all getting it.
Yeah. Yes.
Can I share a couple of quotes here because it might unlock something to talk about as well?
Sure.
Like just on the heels of what you just said then, sis, is that if we see error, if we're triggered by error anywhere in another person, in our body, in the world, or even in the past,
Yeah.
if we're still triggered by something in the past, then it's in our mind still, and we are hanging on to it to prove that the separation is real. That's why we need to accept atonement for ourselves. We need to accept the divine correction in our own mind for whatever we're triggered by. Yeah. So here's a quote. Oh, I forgot to write down where it comes from. Sorry, forgive me.
It'll be in the show notes.
Remember that we said that truth overcomes all error. This means that if you perceive truly, you are cancelling out misperceptions in yourself and others simultaneously. How profound is that?
That's awesome.
Okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you see them as they really, as the others, other people, because you see them as they were really created and can really create, you offer them, these are your brothers, your own validation of their truth. This is the real healing which the miracle actively creates. This is it. I offer only miracles today. This is today's lesson. For I would have them be returned to me. Okay? Yeah. So you know, I love this line. This means that if you perceive truly, you are cancelling out misperceptions in yourself and others simultaneously. It proves there is no private mind. No. There's just one mind, and one mind we share with God and with all our brothers and sisters. Thank God. Okay? And
I love this. It's, you know, when we are steadily and consistently canceling out the errors in our perception, and we're doing this on behalf of ourselves and our brothers, he says, the miracles I give are given back in just the form I need to help me with the problems I perceive. You know, so it's like a two-way blessing, and the blessing may not be in a form that we're outlining or think, but it's always going to come back in a practical way, right? Yeah, I love that.
Oh, that's very comforting, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I think that's why everything's turning into this big, I want to say shit show, and then I'm going to try not to swear, but it's really applicable, right?
Don't say shit.
Shit show.
Shit.
Shit. Yeah. So the world's really in a state of upheaval. And somebody told me that there's the plagues going on in Egypt or something. I burst out laughing, and they looked at me, and I just said, I'm sorry. You know, the state of Washington's underwater, and there's scorpions in Egypt, and like, I just had to laugh. And I go, of course this is all happening because there's so much light, you know, because of those that are really doing the forgiveness work. It's like the lighter, we're really getting down into the throat, the guts of the ego thought system. So anyway,
Yeah, that's true, sis. I mean, but it's interesting because, as you know, I don't watch the news.
I don't either. I'm really being
I
good
don't have contact with the outside world as we know it, except for recently.
Mm.
Because we're very spiritual people.
Yes.
And you know, it just is. When you say that the world, what did you say, is in dire straits or something?
Well, there's just a lot of like prophetic prophecy, end of the world times.
Oh,
It's
really?
almost like on cue.
Oh,
It's
wow.
okay. It's very good. We're all in the ark, you guys. Let the rains fall, let the flooding happen. You're in the ark. You're good. But I mean, if you're not obeying God, if you're not forgiving, if you're not healing your mind, and you're at the mercy of the world, it would be a frightening place to be, allegedly, if it were real. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's
Oh,
great. Huh?
yes.
I'm so glad I know nothing about it.
You're not missing anything. You're not missing anything. But I love that. In heaven, it is different. For there are no needs. That's how we know if what we're looking at is real or not. Yeah.
Right, the same in the real world too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So one more quote,
Yeah.
and this one's from the Manual for Teachers, section 22. The offer of atonement is universal.
Mm.
There's the miracle right there. The offer of atonement is universal. It is equally applicable to all individuals in all circumstances. And in it, in the atonement, is the power to heal all individuals of all forms of sickness.
Yeah.
Not to believe this is to be unfair to God and thus unfaithful to him.
So if we are, it's lovely to forgive and to accept the atonement for ourselves, but is there one area that you would withhold the atonement from the sonship? Is there an exception in our mind? Is there a person or a place or a flavor or a political party or a region, a race that you would withhold this? How do you accept atonement, your at one-ment with God, who is everything, all of creation, and yet try to exempt some of your illusions and say that this is undeserving of the atonement or not part? It is different than how God is declaring his creation to be. That would prevent you from receiving, accepting the atonement for yourself. You can't accept the atonement with an exception. And that's the trick, It's like we want it. Yeah, I want to accept it for myself, but there is no private self. We're accepting it on behalf of the one Son that we are, which is everything. So yeah, and the law of love. If it's not shared, it's not real. So that's sharing beyond what sense testimony and a past and your best I know mine is determining and judging or defining. Yeah, that's big. God is without exception. There's no exception in God. And if we're seeing an exception, that's being unfair to God. It's saying, well, God, I hear what you're saying about your creation, but this pinhole over here that I've got a lot of emotional stirring up around, that's also true. Well, that's just outright defiance, and that only the ego would say that.
I just heard something, and I just want to
Yeah.
make a clarification here. Is when we're talking about sharing, the ego often, and we have said this before, but when we talk about sharing, the ego often goes straight to, well, what about fear? That can be shared. Look at the news. Look at the state of the world, right?
Yeah,
All
right.
of it's shared. No, it can't be shared in truth. And the reason for that is only God's love can be shared. Fear can't be shared because it breaks
Communication.
love's communication. It breaks communication and therefore cannot be shared meaningfully with anyone or anything ever. Yeah.
And that's, the proof of that is you take 50 people all looking at the same thing, but they're taking it through their ego filter, which is fear, and they're all experiencing it differently. That's why we're all at seeming war, because we're all insisting on our own definitions of what everything means and what we want and our private interests and what would be best for us versus them, right? Nothing's being shared. Fear cannot be shared. It totally severs the mind. It closes the mind off, and all communication is of the mind. It has nothing to do with bodies. That's what holy relationship brings us, the gift of knowing that communication cannot be severed, whether there's a body present or not, or whether we have computers and telephones or not. Yeah. Because when you plug in the one mind, Sorry, sis, go ahead.
Yeah, sis, thank you. Just what you were saying there feeds into the first law of chaos that Jesus speaks about.
Yeah,
right?
the truth is different.
Yeah, the truth is different for everyone. Everybody experiences the truth differently. What a crock of...
Yeah. 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 Yes, there's one truth. Yes. In the mind that's at one with, God or the Christ mind, it's the same for everybody because it knows that there is one truth. And our mind knows that. But as soon as you identify with the mythical me, boy, your filter prevents you from experiencing reality at all. And you're only experiencing fear through your pinhole of your definitions and your judgments. Oh, was that that was a beautiful quote. That was from the section in the manual, Are Healing and the Atonement Related? That is really powerful.
Section 22.
Yeah, if you're at all interested, that might be a great backup read. But do we have any blog or anything that we wanted to pad that out with?
No? I forgot. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I confess.
Well, then there it is. There's your assignment. Our Healing and the Atonement Related in a Manual for Teachers, section 22.
Thank you. Good.
That was just off the cuff. I don't know.
Homework.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's lesson 345. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye.